Today, a Purple Heart for Lieutenant Hebert Stanford of Brockport was reunited with his family almost 80 years after the pilot died in France in World War II. A ceremony was held at the VA outpatient clinic in Rochester. Dan Gross was there and brings us this incredible story.
Today, an incredible reunion. The Purple Heart of World War II veteran Lieutenant Hebert Stanford, a Verona native, was reunited with his family in a ceremony at the Rochester VA outpatient clinic.
After 80-plus years, we gather here today to honor Lieutenant Stanford and to continue that pledge by President Lincoln to care for him who shall have borne the battle and for his widow and his orphan.
Lieutenant Stanford was an engineer at Kodak before he became a pilot with the Air Force. In July of 1944, he and his squad, while Stanford was piloting his craft, named for his wife Marion, engaged German pilots in combat in France. He was able to down 2 planes himself before he, in turn, was shot down. His plane in flames, he began to crash, according to an eyewitness account.
Lieutenant Stanford chose to avoid hitting the French woman's house and stayed with his aircraft when he could have ejected.
His family learned this story over 50 years after his death in a trip to the site of the crash in the late 90s. But that's not all they learned. This, according to his niece, who was only 3 weeks old when Lieutenant Stanford was killed, Joyce Stanford Crooks.
They have a monument in Robodangus and have named a street after Lieutenant Hebert Stanford.
In time, the family would donate his war chest to a Brockport museum, but somehow the Purple Heart was lost. But one investigator,
Investigator Kevin Colonna, Orleans County Sheriff's Department,
would track down the medal. An incredible day for the family of Lieutenant Stanford, as well as those there in spirit, and of course for Joyce, Kate Stanford, and Jan St. Pierre.
It's amazing. I had no idea that it had been stolen.
You know, my uncle's award, as well as my dad's best friend was killed in Vietnam during the TET, and he was awarded the Purple Heart. And I have a nephew who's aspiring to be a JAG officer.
It's bittersweet. 80 years later, we really found out what happened.
Dan Gross reporting there. A lot of memories attached to that medal. As for where they're going to keep it, they're still figuring that out. Lieutenant Stanford won an Air Force medal as well an Air Medal with 9 oak leaves during his service, an accomplishment that the VA called unbelievable given his time of service.